What would you do if a police officer accused you of stealing a brand new luxury SUV, only to discover that you were the man who signed the papers that kept the entire dealership in business? Imagine you're standing in a busy luxury dealership on a beautiful Saturday morning. Families are looking at new cars. Salespeople are smiling. Fresh coffee fills the showroom with its warm smell. Everything seems normal. Then, without warning, a police cruiser pulls into the parking lot. A few minutes later, everyone stops what they're doing. Not because of a crime they can see, but because of a mistake no one expected. It was just after 9 o'clock when Ethan Brooks, a quiet black man in his early 40s, walked into the dealership wearing a simple gray polo shirt, blue jeans, and clean white sneakers. He wasn't dressed like a wealthy businessman. He carried no expensive watch, no designer bag, and no security team followed him. To everyone around him, he looked like an ordinary customer enjoying his weekend. A friendly salesperson welcomed him with a smile. "Good morning, sir. Looking for anything special today?" Ethan smiled back. "I'm here to pick up the SUV I purchased." "Of course, sir. I'll bring your paperwork." The salesperson walked toward the office while Ethan quietly admired the black luxury SUV waiting near the showroom entrance. He gently looked at the vehicle, checking every detail without touching it. At that exact moment, a police cruiser stopped outside. Officer Jason Reed stepped out quickly. His face looked serious. He walked through the dealership doors and immediately looked around the showroom. His eyes stopped on Ethan. He pointed toward him. "You." Everyone turned. The showroom suddenly became quiet. Ethan looked at the officer. "Good morning, officer. Step away from that vehicle." Without hesitation, Ethan took 2 small steps backward. "No problem." The officer walked closer. "Is that your vehicle?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" Ethan nodded politely. "The dealership has all the paperwork." Officer Reed looked at him carefully. "I'll decide that." Several customers quietly watched from across the showroom. One woman whispered, "Why is he talking to him like that?" Her husband shrugged. "I don't know." The salesperson hurried back with a folder in his hand. "Officer, I believe there's been a—" Officer Reed raised his hand. "Not now." The salesperson immediately stopped speaking. Ethan remained completely calm. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The officer folded his arms. "We received a report that someone matching your description was trying to leave with a stolen luxury SUV. Ethan didn't argue. He didn't become angry. He simply asked one question. "Did anyone verify the ownership before calling you?" Officer Reed didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer. "I want to see your identification." Ethan gave a small nod. "My wallet is in my jacket pocket." "I'll reach for it slowly." "Don't move." Ethan immediately lowered his hands. "I'll wait." That simple response should have eased the tension. Instead, it seemed to make the officer even more suspicious. People throughout the showroom quietly pulled out their phones. The dealership manager looked through the glass walls of his office, wondering why everyone had suddenly stopped working. Then Officer Reed spoke words that shocked the entire showroom. "Sir, at this moment, I believe this vehicle may be stolen." The room fell silent. Ethan looked at the officer for a few seconds before quietly saying, "Then I hope the dealership owner comes downstairs before this misunderstanding goes any further." High above the showroom, inside a second-floor office, the dealership owner looked through the glass window, and suddenly froze. Ethan remained exactly where he was. His hands stayed at his sides. His face showed no fear and no anger. He simply looked at Officer Reed with quiet confidence, as if he knew something everyone else had yet to discover. The entire showroom had gone silent. Customers stopped walking between the rows of shiny vehicles. Salespeople looked at one another without saying a word. Even the receptionist behind the front desk paused her phone call. Officer Reed stepped closer. "I asked if you have proof this SUV belongs to you." Ethan answered politely. "I do." "Where is it?" "With your permission, I'd like to show you." The officer folded his arms. "Not yet." Ethan gave a small nod. "That's your decision." The calm answer surprised everyone. Most people would have argued. Others might have become frustrated. Ethan did neither. Instead, he patiently waited. That calmness made Officer Reed even more suspicious. "If this is your vehicle," the officer said, "why aren't you trying harder to prove it?" Ethan smiled slightly. "Because the truth doesn't change while people are making assumptions." The words caught the attention of several customers. An older man quietly whispered, "That's an interesting answer." Nearby, the young salesperson still held the purchase folder. "Officer," he said carefully, "everything should be inside these documents." Officer Reed looked at him. "I'll review them when I'm ready." The salesperson slowly lowered the folder. He wanted to help, but he could see the officer wasn't ready to listen. At that moment, another patrol car pulled into the dealership parking lot. Officer Sarah Collins stepped inside. She quickly looked around the showroom before walking toward Officer Reed. "What do we have?" she asked. "Possible stolen vehicle." Officer Collins looked at Ethan. He didn't look nervous. He wasn't trying to leave. He wasn't arguing. Everything about him seemed unusually calm. She lowered her voice. "Did we verify the VIN number?" "Not yet." "The registration?" "Not yet." "The purchase agreement?" Officer Reed shook his head. "We're getting there." Officer Collins frowned. "Maybe we should start there." Officer Reed didn't answer. Meanwhile, upstairs, the dealership owner, Richard Lawson, remained frozen beside his office window. His eyes stayed fixed on Ethan. "No," he whispered. "It can't be." His assistant looked confused. "Sir, do you know him?" Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward his computer and quickly opened the dealership's customer database. His fingers moved faster than ever before. Outside his office, several department managers noticed his unusual behavior. One of them asked, "Is everything okay?" Richard barely looked up. "I hope so." Downstairs, Ethan finally spoke again. "Officer." "Yes. May I ask one question?" Officer Reed nodded cautiously. "Go ahead. Has anyone inside this dealership confirmed who purchased this SUV?" The officer looked toward the sales staff. "No." Ethan nodded slowly. "I thought so." Officer Collins looked at Ethan for several seconds. Something about his confidence didn't feel fake. It felt earned. Just then, a loud notification echoed from the owner's office upstairs. Richard stared at the computer screen. A customer profile had appeared. His face lost all color. He immediately grabbed his office phone and pressed one emergency extension. The person on the other end answered almost instantly. Richard took a deep breath before speaking. "Cancel my next meeting." There was a brief pause. Then he added in a voice filled with urgency, "And tell the executive board. Mr. Ethan Brooks is standing in our showroom." Officer Reed stood with his arms crossed, convinced he was in control of the situation. Around him, the showroom remained unusually quiet. The excitement of customers choosing new cars had disappeared. Now, every eye was fixed on Ethan Brooks. Ethan still hadn't moved. His calm expression never changed. Officer Collins stepped closer to the black SUV and quietly examined it. She looked at the temporary registration displayed inside the windshield. "Jason," she said softly, "the temporary tag looks legitimate." Officer Reed glanced at it. "Fake documents exist." "They do," Collins replied, "but we should still verify them." Without answering, Reed walked around the SUV, checking every door and every window. Everything looked exactly as it should. There were no broken locks. No damaged windows. No signs that anyone had forced the vehicle open. Something didn't fit. Ethan watched quietly. "I told you," he said politely. "The dealership already has every document you need." Reed looked at him. "And I told you I'll decide when to check them." Ethan simply nodded. "As you wish." The salesman holding the purchase folder became more nervous. "Officer, the finance office can confirm everything in less than a minute." Reed looked at him. "Please step back." The young salesman obeyed immediately. Across the showroom, the finance manager had been listening to everything. He quietly walked toward his computer and entered the vehicle's stock number. Within seconds, the purchase file appeared. His eyes moved down the screen. Customer name. Vehicle identification number. Payment confirmation. Everything matched perfectly. Then he noticed a small gold icon beside the customer's profile. He had never seen that symbol before. Curious, he clicked it. A message immediately appeared. Executive-level customer record. Manager authorization required. The finance manager frowned. Executive level? He quickly picked up the office phone. "Mr. Lawson. I think you need to see something." Upstairs, dealership owner Richard Lawson was already staring at Ethan's customer profile. The same gold symbol appeared on his screen. He slowly scrolled farther down. Then his eyes widened. "No," he whispered. "This can't be happening." He immediately left his office and hurried toward the stairs. Back downstairs, Officer Collins quietly walked over to Ethan. "Sir," she asked respectfully, "have you been here since the dealership opened?" "Yes." "Did anyone hand you the keys?" The salesperson was about to. Collins nodded. Everything Ethan said matched what the staff had already told her. She looked back at Officer Reed. "I really think we should verify ownership before going any further." For the first time, Reed didn't answer immediately. Before he could respond, the showroom doors opened again. Richard Lawson walked in quickly. The employees had never seen him move that fast. Officer Reed smiled slightly. Perfect. He believed the owner was finally here to confirm his suspicions. Instead, Richard ignored the officer completely. He walked straight toward Ethan with an expression no one could understand. He stopped only a few feet away. His hands trembled slightly. The entire showroom held its breath. Then, in a respectful voice that shocked every employee, Richard quietly said, "Mr. Brooks, please tell me we haven't made a terrible mistake." Richard Lawson's words echoed through the silent showroom. "Mr. Brooks, please tell me we haven't made a terrible mistake." No one moved. The salespeople looked at each other with confused expressions. Customers stopped recording for a moment, trying to understand what they had just heard. Officer Reed frowned. "Mr. Lawson," he said confidently, "this man claims he owns this SUV." Richard slowly turned toward the officer. "He does." The answer came so quickly that even Officer Collins looked surprised. Officer Reed blinked. "What?" Richard took a deep breath. "The paperwork is complete. The payment cleared yesterday. The vehicle was prepared this morning." Officer Reed looked at Ethan. Then back at Richard. "If that's true, why didn't someone tell us?" The young salesperson raised his hand carefully. "Sir, I tried." The officer remembered the moment he had stopped the salesman from speaking. For the first time that morning, a feeling of doubt settled into his mind. Ethan remained calm. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. He simply stood quietly beside the SUV. Richard looked at Ethan with genuine concern. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Brooks." Ethan nodded politely. "I know this wasn't your intention. But it happened in your dealership." Richard lowered his eyes. "You're right." Officer Collins stepped toward the paperwork still resting on the sales desk. "May I review the purchase file now?" Richard immediately handed it to her. "Please do." She carefully opened the folder. Every document matched. Purchase agreement. Vehicle identification number. Insurance confirmation. Temporary registration. Driver verification. Everything was complete. She looked at Officer Reed. "The documents are genuine." Reed stood silently. The evidence was beginning to tell a very different story. Just then, another employee hurried across the showroom carrying a tablet. "Mr. Lawson." Richard looked up. "What is it?" "The corporate office has been trying to reach you." He accepted the tablet. A message filled the screen. "Urgent, please confirm whether Mr. Ethan Brooks has arrived." Richard's heart skipped a beat. He quietly locked the screen before anyone else could read it. Officer Reed noticed. "Is something wrong?" Richard forced a small smile. "I need to make one phone call. Can it wait?" Richard answered immediately. "No." He stepped a few feet away and dialed a private number. The call was answered almost instantly. "Good morning." Richard spoke quietly so the crowd couldn't hear. "He's here." A short silence followed. Then the voice on the other end asked one question. "Is everything ready for today's announcement?" Richard looked toward Ethan. Then toward the police officers. His face turned pale. "No." "What happened?" Richard hesitated. Finally he answered. "There's been an unexpected misunderstanding." Several seconds passed. No one on the showroom floor could hear the person speaking. But they could see Richard's expression changing. His hands tightened around the phone. His breathing slowed. When the call ended, he walked back toward Ethan. Officer Reed stepped in front of him. "Mr. Lawson, I need to know exactly who this man is." Richard looked at Ethan. Then at every employee watching. Finally, he took a slow breath. "I can't explain that myself." Officer Reed frowned. "Why not?" Richard answered quietly, "Because the people who can explain it are already on their way here." At that exact moment, 3 black executive vehicles slowly turned into the dealership parking lot. Every employee who saw them immediately stood a little straighter. 3 black executive vehicles rolled slowly into the dealership parking lot. They had no flashing lights and made almost no noise, yet every employee who noticed them immediately stopped what they were doing. Even customers standing outside turned to watch. Officer Reed looked through the showroom windows. "Who are they?" he asked. Richard Lawson didn't answer. His eyes remained fixed on the vehicles. "I was hoping they wouldn't have to come," he whispered. The first vehicle stopped near the entrance. Two professionally dressed men stepped out. They weren't wearing expensive suits to impress anyone. They carried themselves with quiet confidence, speaking softly into wireless earpieces before looking toward the showroom. Officer Collins noticed something unusual. "They're not acting like security guards," she said quietly. "They're protecting someone important." Inside the dealership, Ethan remained exactly where he was. His expression hadn't changed since the police first arrived. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't excited. He simply waited. Officer Reed looked at him. "You've been surprisingly calm through all of this." Ethan smiled politely. "When you know the truth, there's no reason to panic." Those words stayed with everyone in the room. Just then, the dealership doors opened. The two suited men walked inside. Every employee expected them to approach Richard Lawson. Instead, they walked directly toward Ethan. When they reached him, both men smiled respectfully. "Good morning, Mr. Brooks." Ethan returned the greeting. "Good morning. We're sorry we're a little late." "No problem." Officer Reed's confusion grew. "You know these gentlemen?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." Richard Lawson quietly stepped forward. "Everything is ready upstairs." One of the suited men looked at Richard. "Not anymore." Richard lowered his head. "I know." The man glanced toward Officer Reed before speaking again. "Mr. Brooks, would you like us to explain the situation?" Ethan shook his head gently. "Not yet. I'd rather everyone understands the complete story first." Officer Collins watched Ethan carefully. Most people in his position would have demanded answers. Some would have become angry. Others might have embarrassed the officer in front of everyone. Ethan chose none of those. He simply remained respectful. That decision impressed her more than anything else she had seen that morning. At that moment, Richard's phone rang again. He looked at the screen and immediately answered. "Yes, sir." His voice became noticeably more respectful. "They're here." He listened for several seconds. "I understand. I'll let him know." After ending the call, Richard walked over to Ethan. "Mr. Brooks." "Yes." "The chairman has just landed." The showroom became silent again. Several employees looked at one another. "The chairman? Why would the chairman of the company's parent organization come to a local dealership over one customer?" Richard continued quietly. "He'll be here in less than 5 minutes." Officer Reed couldn't hide his curiosity anymore. "Mr. Lawson." Richard turned toward him. "Who exactly is Ethan Brooks?" Richard looked at Ethan first, almost asking for permission. Ethan gave a small, calm nod. Richard took a deep breath. "I can only tell you one thing." He paused. "He's not just buying this dealership's newest SUV. Officer Reed leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Before Richard could answer, another luxury sedan stopped outside. One elderly gentleman stepped out. The moment Richard saw him, his face turned completely pale. He whispered only 4 words. "The chairman is here himself." The entire showroom became silent. Richard Lawson's quiet words echoed through the room. "The chairman is here himself." Every employee turned toward the glass entrance. Outside, an elegant black sedan had stopped near the front doors. There were no flashing lights or loud announcements. The elderly gentleman who stepped out wore a simple navy suit and carried himself with quiet confidence. He smiled politely at everyone he passed. Officer Reed frowned. "That's the chairman." Richard nodded. "Yes." Officer Collins noticed something unusual. "He doesn't have a large security team." Richard smiled slightly. He never believes leadership should arrive with noise. The chairman walked through the dealership doors. Salespeople immediately stood a little straighter. Managers quietly stepped aside. The room felt different. Not because anyone had ordered silence, but because everyone respected the man walking toward them. Officer Reed expected the chairman to greet Richard first. Instead, the chairman walked directly past him. He stopped in front of Ethan Brooks. A warm smile appeared on his face. "Ethan." "Good morning, sir," Ethan replied. "I'm sorry your day started this way." Ethan smiled gently. "It's been an unusual morning." The chairman laughed softly. "I suppose it has." Officer Reed looked completely confused. The chairman wasn't speaking to Ethan like an ordinary customer. He spoke to him like someone he had known for years. Richard quietly walked over. "Sir, I sincerely apologize." The chairman raised a hand. "This isn't the time for blame. It's time for facts." Those words immediately caught Captain Davis's attention, who had just arrived after receiving an urgent call from dispatch. He entered the showroom and introduced himself. "Good morning. I'm Captain Davis." The chairman nodded respectfully. "Thank you for coming, Captain." Captain Davis looked around the room before speaking. "I've been informed there's a disagreement regarding vehicle ownership." Richard answered first. "There isn't any more. The ownership has already been confirmed." Captain Davis looked toward Officer Reed. "Was the paperwork verified?" Officer Reed slowly lowered his eyes. "It has been now. And it belongs to Mr. Brooks." Captain Davis nodded. "Good." Then he asked the next question. "So why is everyone still standing here?" Nobody answered. The silence itself became the answer. The chairman looked toward Ethan. "Ethan, would you like to explain today's meeting?" Ethan gently shook his head. "I think that would be better coming from you." The chairman smiled. "I thought you'd say that." He turned toward every employee gathered inside the showroom. "I know many of you are wondering why I came here personally this morning." Every face in the room focused on him. This dealership wasn't preparing for an ordinary vehicle delivery. Richard quietly closed his eyes. He already knew what was coming. The chairman continued. "Today was supposed to be one of the biggest announcements in our company's history." Customers looked at one another. Employees whispered under their breath. "What announcement?" Officer Reed felt his heartbeat getting faster. He looked at Ethan again. Nothing about him had changed. He was still calm. Still humble. Still saying almost nothing. The chairman slowly reached into his briefcase and removed a sealed envelope with the company's official gold seal. He held it up for everyone to see. "This document changes the future of this dealership." Officer Reed couldn't stay silent any longer. "What is it?" The chairman looked at Ethan before answering. Then he quietly smiled. "It's the official appointment naming Ethan Brooks as the new CEO of the company that owns this entire dealership group." The showroom fell completely silent. No one spoke. No one moved. The chairman's words seemed to freeze the entire building. "This document officially appoints Ethan Brooks as the new CEO of the company that owns this entire dealership group." For several long seconds, the only sound anyone could hear was the quiet hum of the showroom lights. Officer Reed looked at Ethan. Then at the sealed document. Then back at Richard Lawson. "This can't be real," he whispered. Richard slowly nodded. "It is." Officer Collins took a slow breath. "So Mr. Brooks wasn't just buying a vehicle today?" Richard answered quietly. "No. He was coming here for his first official visit as our new chief executive officer." The customers looked at one another in complete disbelief. One man quietly said, "The officer thought he was stealing a car." His wife finished the sentence. "When he actually owns the company that sells it." Even then, Ethan didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He didn't try to embarrass anyone. He simply stood there with the same calm expression he had worn since the beginning. The chairman handed the sealed envelope to Ethan. "Congratulations." Ethan accepted it with both hands. "Thank you, sir. I'll do everything I can to earn the trust of every employee." The chairman smiled proudly. "I know you will." Captain Davis looked toward Officer Reed. "Is there anything left to verify?" Officer Reed slowly shook his head. "No, Captain. The paperwork matches. The vehicle belongs to Mr. Brooks. The dealership records match. The payment records match." Captain Davis nodded. "Good." Then he added, "Facts always matter more than first impressions." Officer Reed lowered his head. "I understand." He slowly walked toward Ethan. The entire showroom watched. "Mr. Brooks." Ethan looked at him. "Yes, officer. I owe you an apology. You treated me with respect from the very beginning. I didn't return that same respect to you." Ethan listened quietly. Officer Reed continued, "I made assumptions before verifying the facts. I ignored opportunities to slow down. And for that, I'm truly sorry." The room remained silent. Everyone waited for Ethan's response. Instead of criticizing the officer, instead of reminding everyone that he was now the CEO, Ethan simply smiled. "I appreciate your apology." Officer Reed looked relieved. Then Ethan added something that surprised everyone. "If today's mistake helps even one person remember to judge less quickly tomorrow, then something good can still come from it." Several employees quietly nodded. Those simple words carried more weight than any angry speech could have. The chairman looked proudly at Ethan. This is exactly why the board chose you. Leadership isn't about power. It's about character. Just then, Captain Davis received a message on his radio. He listened carefully before looking toward Officer Reed. His expression became serious. Officer Reed looked up. Yes, Captain. The department has reviewed the dispatch recordings and your body camera footage. He paused. They've reached an initial decision. The showroom became silent once again. Officer Reed swallowed hard. Captain Davis slowly folded the radio back onto his shoulder before saying, they've ordered an immediate professional standards review. And they want to speak with you before the day is over. Captain Davis looked around the showroom before speaking again. The excitement had disappeared. Now, the room was filled with quiet reflection. Every employee, every customer, and every officer understood they had just witnessed a lesson that would not be forgotten. Officer Reed stood silently. For the first time that day, he wasn't trying to explain his actions. He wasn't making excuses. He simply waited. Captain Davis spoke calmly. This review isn't meant to embarrass anyone. He looked directly at Officer Reed. It's meant to remind every officer that facts must always come before assumptions. Officer Reed nodded. I understand, Captain. The chairman turned toward Ethan. Would you like to continue with today's announcement? Ethan smiled politely. In a few minutes. First, I'd like to finish what started outside. The chairman nodded. Of course. Richard Lawson looked at Ethan with genuine regret. Mr. Brooks. On behalf of everyone at this dealership, I'm truly sorry. Ethan shook his head gently. I accept your apology. Richard looked surprised. You do? Yes. Because mistakes can become valuable lessons when people are willing to learn from them. Several employees quietly smiled. That was exactly the kind of leadership they had hoped for. Captain Davis then asked Officer Collins to connect Officer Reed's body camera to the conference room screen. Within minutes, everyone gathered inside. The recording began from the moment Officer Reed arrived at the dealership. The video clearly showed Ethan stopping the instant he was asked. He never argued. He never raised his voice. He answered every question respectfully. When asked to stay still, he stayed still. When told not to reach for his wallet, that he immediately lowered his hands. The recording continued. Everyone watched as the young salesperson tried to hand over the purchase documents. Officer Reed stopped him before he could speak. Captain Davis paused the video. He looked toward the room. What could have happened differently? Officer Collins answered first. We could have verified the paperwork immediately. Richard added, the misunderstanding would have ended in less than a minute. Captain Davis nodded. Exactly. The video continued once more. It showed Ethan calmly asking, did anyone verify the ownership before calling you? The room became quiet again. Those simple words now carried a completely different meaning. Captain Davis stopped the recording for the final time. There was never any attempt to steal this vehicle. There was never any effort to hide. There was never any threat. He looked toward Officer Reed. The evidence shows Mr. Brooks cooperated from beginning to end. Officer Reed took a deep breath. I made my decision before I gathered all the facts. Captain Davis nodded. And recognizing that mistake is the first step toward becoming a better officer. Just then, a member of the company's legal department entered the conference room carrying a sealed folder. He handed it to the chairman. Sir, corporate security has completed its internal review. The chairman opened the folder carefully. After reading the first page, his expression became serious. He slowly looked toward Richard Lawson. Then toward Captain Davis. Finally, he looked at Ethan. There is one more decision that must be announced today. Everyone in the room waited. The chairman closed the folder and quietly said, this decision won't just affect the police department, it will change the future of this dealership as well. The conference room remained completely silent as the chairman closed the folder. Every employee waited anxiously for his next words. He looked toward Richard Lawson first. Richard, after reviewing today's events, the board has decided to launch a company-wide customer respect and verification program. Every dealership in our network will receive new training. Richard nodded. I understand, sir. Then the chairman turned toward Captain Davis. Our legal team has reviewed the security footage. Mr. Brooks was treated respectfully by most employees, but this situation should never have reached this point. Captain Davis agreed. The police department has already opened a professional standards investigation. The review will determine whether department policies were properly followed. Officer Reed accepted the decision without arguing. I'll fully cooperate. Ethan looked at him. That's the right choice. The chairman smiled. This is exactly why the board trusted Ethan with this company. Then Ethan addressed everyone in the room. I don't want today to be remembered because I became CEO. He paused. I want it to be remembered because we learned that every customer deserves the same respect, whether they arrive in a luxury suit or simple jeans. Everyone quietly nodded. Just as the meeting seemed ready to end, Ethan received a phone call. He looked at the screen, smiled slightly, and answered. After listening for only a few seconds, he looked toward the chairman and quietly said, "Sir, the board has one final surprise for everyone, and they want to announce it today." As the meeting came to an end, Ethan's phone call finally ended. He smiled, thanked the person on the other side, and quietly placed the phone back into his pocket. The chairman looked at him with curiosity. Well? Ethan nodded. The board has approved it. Every employee in the conference room waited for the announcement. The chairman stepped forward with a warm smile. Today was supposed to introduce Ethan Brooks as our new CEO. He paused for a moment. But after everything that happened this morning, the board has decided to announce something even more important. The room became completely silent. We are launching a nationwide Respect First initiative across every dealership we own. He continued, from today forward, every customer will be treated with the same dignity, patience, and professionalism, regardless of their appearance, clothing, or background. Every employee, from the newest salesperson to senior management, will receive additional training to make sure fairness always comes before assumptions. The employees applauded. Richard Lawson stepped toward Ethan. Mr. Brooks, thank you for showing us what real leadership looks like. Ethan smiled. Leadership isn't about proving who you are. It's about showing others how people should be treated. Captain Davis turned to Officer Reed. I hope today's lesson stays with all of us. Officer Reed nodded sincerely. It will. I made a decision before checking the facts, and I'll never make that mistake again. Ethan shook his hand. Learning from a mistake is how trust begins to return. As everyone left the conference room, customers and employees looked at Ethan with a new sense of respect, not because he was the CEO, but because he had remained calm, humble, and respectful when he had every reason not to. The lesson of the day was simple: never judge a person by what you think you see. The truth is often far greater than first impressions, and real character is revealed by how we treat people before we know who they are. What would you have done if you had witnessed this moment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more powerful hidden identity and justice stories. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next unforgettable story.